G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and so far a fantastic Friday. It's the weekend before, well, the real silly season before, of course, you step into Christmas, New Year and all of that. Now, a lot of people, including myself, are going to be traveling this week on the roads. Now, no matter where you are, please take it easy. You'll get to where you're going. Every year we have catastrophic, terrible accidents on the road. Please just take it safe. Now, as you can see, I'm not in my studio at home. I'm actually in my parents' kitchen. So excuse me if it is echoey. You can probably tell from behind me, these things, what are like those jars with like pickled chilies or whatever in them. I think everyone's parents had them as well as random roosters or chickens around the house. That's how you can tell it's an authentic parents' kitchen. Although those pickled things, I think that would be a breach of the Chemical Warfare Convention if it was opened up. I'm down here, of course, because I've got my 10-year school reunion that I'm running. My health is actually reasonable at the moment. I got a new script for medication and I'm sort of coming off the chemo. So I'm still pretty, but I am feeling a lot better, as you can probably see in my reporting. So I'm looking forward to tonight. There's a lot of people I haven't seen for 10 years. Hopefully some people come. It's not just me reliving the dream. Now, legends, we have a lot to go over. I want to talk at length about North Koreans, South Koreans, movements in Kursk, a look at some propaganda as well. I want to talk about maps. I've got a lot of geolocations on the maps to show you today. I know it's been a few days since I've shown some geolocations, but these are important ones. Remember, I ignore a lot of footage unless I deem it important for the maps because it shows a change on the maps or strategically important, new weapon system, new tactics, whatever. I'm not just interested in things going bang. You know, I don't like seeing people die. I've had a lot of exposure to that and my opinion on it shifted greatly when I saw just catastrophic deaths in one period of my life in an area in Ukraine. As well, I want to look at this Putin versus Zelensky about the use of missile systems at the moment, about what Putin has said at a conference talking about Otoshnik and what Zelensky has said back on that. I think you'll find some of it both informational and someone can have a laugh at it as well. But of course, all the talk recently has been about North Koreans entering the war in Kursk. Now, has there been evidence of this? Yes. Is that evidence, in my opinion, beyond reasonable doubt and would hold up in like a court? I don't believe so as well. I think it's highly likely there are North Koreans operating. I believe that it's highly likely they're operating. I think we have seen some footage. Are we hearing this? Will they've been mowed down by the hundreds, thousands of wounded? No, we haven't seen that. And the reason why a lot of this is sort of like the boy who cries wolf is now for weeks, months, we've been told North Koreans are defecting. They're dying by that many numbers, that all this is happening and they're addicted to this and that. And then it seems like only 3 or 4 days ago, they entered the battlefield for the first time. So it's at this point, that's the reason I'm saying there's such a high threshold of evidence now, is because, well, are you admitting that all of that previously was a lie then? Because they've just entered, is that all now previous a lie? So that's why the threshold on this is awfully high. But I want to share some new updates on this, but also some new footage I saw which lines up with something. I had to go back and find it, but that I shared about the North Koreans back in the day, as well as the UK MOD. So let's start with the maps. Of course, here is Ukraine in the center of the screen, the capital of Kyiv. Now, the red and purple areas are areas occupied by Russia. And of course, the blue back into Kursk Oblast is where Ukraine is occupying back into Russia. Now, quickly, straight off the bat, we do see some shift to the northwest of Sudzha, right where my cursor is here. Just take a look. We skip forward a day and we do see a shift there around Probrecky as well as further down here. Now, I want to show you a couple of maps and then some footage and where something just isn't lining up. So let's firstly compare the Syriac map to this. Now, Syriac does show that there is some movement on this map in very similar areas. So, yep, let's confirm that definitely occurred. But out to around Martianovka area here, there are clashes both forward and back. No changes on the maps shown by either of these maps. But I have one more update to show you here. So this is footage here of Russian Marines flying then the Marine flag. So let's skip forward. You can, again, this will be on the Telegram if you'd like to see. So we have this Marine flag right here. Now, at that same event where Putin was speaking, he was handed a signed Marine flag as well. So you can see that flag then here on the footage. But the geolocation of this is what I'm interested in. And this is to this Novov, I can't pronounce it, but in here, right where this cuts down. So right in where my cursor is, if we zoom out, that is where that is geolocated to. So the Russians have advanced in there according to the geolocation and according to what is being said about that geolocation as well. Some are saying it is around 700 meters. Let's do it. It's about 1.2 kilometers from this map here. So take that as you will. But in my opinion, there has been an advancement here too. But movements in, of course, Kursk Oblast, where it is Ukraine holding a lot of ground in here, about 500 square kilometers, although they've lost about 50%. At one point, we believe that ballooned out to about 1,000, and a very important area for Ukraine when they speak about the importance of this in negotiations. And in my opinion, this is irrelevant. It's not enough ground. It's got nothing that strategically significant in here, but it's being held as a very high pedestal for negotiations. So again, we will see. But this is something I wanted to talk about. I will talk about the North Koreans in here, but the UK MOD intelligence update. It's not the first time you're going to see it in this video today. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, aka North Korea, don't know if it's the People's Republic or Democratic, but go with it. These troops are currently engaged in offensive combat operations against Ukrainian forces in Kursk Oblast, Russia. North Korean troops have highly likely sustained significant combat casualties, but so far only achieved tactical gains. Now, what I will say in this is nothing in Kursk is tactical. I believe it's a tactical mistake. I believe it's a strategic mistake, but this was a strategic operation for the, quote, Kursk Exchange Fund, the ability to take the POWs in the beginning, hold some of Russian ground, and the ability for negotiations in here too. Any losses or gains in here for Ukraine is strategic. Yes, small movements are tactical, but as far as this is strategic, and there is this being chewed back actually fairly quickly when we consider the kilometre squares and time frames as well. They say around 11,000 North Korean troops have deployed to the Kursk region. Again, haven't seen evidence of significant combat casualties. Yeah, like when you talk about, those bodies, let's even assume that those, I think it was 23 bodies lined up. Let's assume all of those were North Koreans. Now, what I will say is that's not going to be happening. They're going to be working, as they say, interoperability here. They're going to be working in line with the Russian forces too. But even if all of those are, that is significant because it's 23 people who have lost their lives. And I really have a soft spot for the North Koreans because, of course, they are so sheltered from the outside world and everything else. But when you're talking hundreds or thousands and in attritional protracted war, it's not the same as what is being claimed and has been claimed now for months. That's where all the doubt comes into it. But they say they're almost certainly experiencing interoperability difficulties. The two forces do not share a common language. The North Korean troops almost certainly have difficulties integrating into Russia's command and control structure. And we spoke about this before, that these guys, they don't have any combat experience. We don't know of their training, but they also don't speak the language or will use the same tactics. Now, this is a good way for North Korea to get experience, but we would assume that they will have large losses too, and there's going to be interoperability difficulties. No one knows this better than guys who deployed to Afghanistan working with the ANA, with the Afghan National Army forces. But again, this idea that just thousands are being lost, well, we've been told for weeks that that has been happening as well as desertions. Now it seems it's all at once. But there are gains being made, probably costly gains. It's attritional combat. Russia and North Korea have deepened their bilateral partnership with the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty, which includes a mutual defence clause. So if one is attacked, they can attack. It's similar to sort of what like NATO has. And this is what the problem with Kursk is Kursk, if we talk about internationally recognised borders, then Kursk is internationally recognised as Russia. With this treaty that they've got, then North Korea can deploy in here under the Strategic Partnership Treaty. Now, of course, there's sanctions, whatever else, on North Korea, but at the end of the day, I don't believe, and this is what people said, even if we see North Korea fight in Kursk, will they cross into Sumy? Maybe not. That would be seen vastly different. Taking effect from 4th of December 24 for Russia, North Korea support to the war has highly likely been the core driver of partnership has until recently centred around North Korea's provision of arms, so North Korea supplying arms to Russia rather than troops, but in return DPRK has received high-level international support from Russia and secured trading partner willing to break sanctions. One thing I have heard about this is people have been saying, like pro-Ukrainian people, and I think the Minister of Foreign Affairs has, but don't quote me on that, but people have said, and I've seen people criticising, going, Russia has allies that are willing to send troops to die. The Ukraine only has allies that are willing to send some weapon systems and late, which is an interesting take here as well. But we see this, and of course, I believe a lot of this is being pushed forward and forward because this has been for the use case of a few thousand North Korean soldiers in here that we know there's going to be problems of fighting. It has then allowed Ukraine to use, of course, long-range weapon strikes because a third country has ended. Biden has gone, yep, do that. As well as South Korea has one of the biggest military industrial complexes in the world. Now, South Korea's constitution says that they can't deploy those systems or can't give those systems to a country that is at war, to a belligerent. They can't do that. Of course, we saw a coup in South Korea, and I don't know that much about that, but I believe there's going to be a massive push, change constitutions, amend things, and bring in South Korean arms as Western arms stocks are getting low and more difficult to push. And we see these leaflets today. If you don't follow Battles and Beers, go and follow Battles and Beers. These leaflets are allegedly being dropped across Kursk. Surrender today and welcome tomorrow in South Korea. If anyone leaves North Korea, they can have refuge in South Korea. So apparently these leaflets are being dropped also. But let's go into what I was talking about. Now, this footage came up on a Russian page I saw today of North Korean 170mm M1989 self-propelled guns on a train somewhere in Russia, and a hell of a lot of them. Now, I do not have a geolocation for this, but it doesn't really matter because what I was told a while back, and I shared this at the time, this was weeks and weeks ago, and this is off one of my sources. One thing I also want to share with you, it's regarding the North Korean artillery systems. Now, for grammar and spelling in this, not a native English speaker. Since the start of the North Korean story, my acquaintances told me the North Korean soldiers will not fight on the front line in Kursk, but will work with artillery and drone combination. North Korean Special Forces will be working close to the front line in drone-embedded units. And again, interoperability too. This system, X system, takes 8 personnel to operate and different munition type that Russia does not produce. Russia, this is a 170mm munition, not produced. Its fire rate is slow, it's 2 shots per 5 minutes. Russia has enough systems in this caliber range, so not that particular caliber, but in that range. Remember, you've got the peons, the 207mm, and then below that as well, and 151s, all of this, and can still use that they are familiar with and don't take 8 personnel to operate, and they shoot much faster. So what as he says, gaining experience on this, so the Russians gaining experience on this thing is just not worth what it provides. So 20 guns working plus logistics drone units will easily take 3,000 troops. So he's saying that's where the North Koreans are going. It's not worth the Russians training on this, but you can bring the North Koreans in to operate on this. I shared this weeks ago, if you remember. This is for me. The biggest proof of North Korean direct involvement, not the stories of the North Korean meat waves, but the North Korean soldiers will use to boost shells to shoot safer 60 kilometers in Kursk. So they're using booster shells as a type of artillery just to get experience fighting in modern war, especially with drones. Different systems could go in and out just like trials. Death of these soldiers will be difficult to prove because they are far from the front line. This will save up Russian artillery to go into Ukraine. So these artillery can take over some of the Russian guns and maybe those can move into occupied areas. Now, I shared that a while back. Take it as you will, but it does tend to make sense that moving back, we haven't seen any captured POWs yet, or any, as I would say, beyond reasonable doubt evidence. Although there's meant to be hundreds and hundreds killed, we're not seeing it. There was shown in a hospital setting as well. I think that was the most evidence. But again, at this point in time, am I willing to say beyond reasonable doubt? No, because one, the threshold that I've put because of the boy who cried wolf before this, as well as the incentivization of trying to get South Korean arms as the West is struggling to supply arms, getting South Korea on board after the long-range strikes, then South Korea, you can see how this is a big bonus for Ukraine. North Korean troops coming in does way more for Ukraine than it does for Russia. 11,000 troops to Russia is not going to have the same effect as Ukraine getting allowed to have long-range strikes, tick, South Korean weapons. Potential tick, we will see what happens politically in South Korea. Now, again, let's zoom back out. We'll look at the maps. You know the areas on this. Let's turn this on. Of course, what you're seeing as far as the red check, This is ground that Russia has made in the past 24 hours. Now, I will note Russian advances have slowed down over this month. That is not surprising to me. This is what I've said as the winter sets in, as things get colder. We're seeing guys in white camouflage. We're seeing snow on the ground. I won't be surprised if things slow down. And that is what we are seeing at this point in time. But it may speed up again. Russia has been pushing very hard the last 12 months. So let's have a look at a couple of geolocations in here. Of course, you can see around Sukhiyali, Konstantinovsky, and there's Zelenivkia here. And I have some proofs of this from geolocations as well. So let's talk about this area down in here, and this is what we see. This is geolocated footage. I'll show you the geolocation in a second. So there is a Ukrainian flag hanging out of a window here. The Russian forces soldier here takes it down and then installs a Russian national flag in the window here, replacing that Ukrainian flag. Now, the geolocation for this is right in this area down in here, confirming where Deep State has shown its updates today. Now, furthermore, we have another one of these. This Zelenivkia, so it confirms the occupation of that, as well as the occupation of Zelenivkia here too. So let's have a look. We see geolocation right here on this second road that runs through. So right on the outskirts here, we see then a Russian Empire flag, as you may have seen, yellow, white, and black nationalistic flag being flown here. So you can see that right there. And these two troops geolocated to that area, confirming advances there also. So let's have a look at where some maps are showing. Remember, Syriac shows that a lot of this has come under control. So let's have a look at the Syriac map first of this area. So you can see the advancement up in here. See this bit that's floating out in here? He's showing that that is all connected. The way this war is working and that connection, if you're fully just dislocated from it, I couldn't see that you could hold that for very long. And movement out, of course, from this red dot, which is Uspenivkia, confirmed here as well, moving out from where that pocket had closed up. But these maps today showing fairly similar if you take into account the grey zone on this map here. Now, Noel reports he has another update in here too, showing Zelenivkia, but not showing the advancement in Sukhiyali or the apparent dislocation of soldiers out around here, but showing that this is filling up as well. It's worth having a look at. Now, while we're down in the south here, the other thing I want to show you was Kurakhove. Now, Syriac is showing that Kurakhove is coming, or at least the main center of it has come under control. Yes, there's still these industrial sectors out here, but what you'd call like the town or city of Kurakhove come under control itself. Basically showing if this grey zone was red. That is a common theme with Syriac, is it's like whatever Deep State shows as grey, Syriac is red. And I will say Syriac is very reliable with things, including Ukrainian advances, because Deep State sometimes doesn't show Russian advance, so it can't show if Ukraine has had successful counters in this either. So let's move our way down. Velika Novoselivka, now no changes shown on this map today, but remember, Syriac is showing that Makarivkia, this red dot, has come under control and all that has been closed up. So again, take that as you will, but really starting that envelopment around Velika Novoselivka on, of course, the northern flank, which is being shown, and now pushing on the west as well. So wait and see what is occurring out from Rivnepil in this direction over the next coming weeks. I think that will be very telling. Now, let's continue moving our way up, and of course movement out from Zoroya, movement down towards Novolenivkia. This is of course the Pokrovsk front, trying to expand that so you can't get cut off. The biggest threat to the Russian forces on these advancements is having a large amount of troops cut off all at once. Grind, expand, grind, expand. That is what we are seeing. That is what happens when you're in one of the gentlemen clubs. People grind, expand, I'm sure. Now, let's have a look in this. So, we'll have a look, and of course, we're looking at areas around Shevchenko, Pishyany. Now, there's a couple of Pishyanis, but this is on the Pokrovsk front, that this is expanding control around here, and of course around Zeleny as well. Russian army made new advances in here and reaching the southern outskirts of Pishyany. Again, basically showing where the grey zone is here, becoming red. Further, we have then a second update in here. Now, I think I did miss to the south yesterday. Yeah, so down here we see where this red is. This is being confirmed. The difference is Surak is showing that it is just straight across here also, that is coming under control to the east of here too. And this being shown, of course, here today, but much further down, because this is Pushkini, which is here, that is basically closed right across where my cursor is. So you could draw an imaginary line there. I'm not going to do it. That is being closed off. Now, let's keep moving our way up, and we have an update in Toretsk and Chassis VR as well. Toretsk, no changes shown on this map. Remember, if I miss something, let me know, because it is easy to miss here. We have, of course, this Telecon, that out to the south in here, there has been some small ground made through Toretsk as well, being claimed by Syriac. Now let's move our way up. We have Chassis VR. Now let's see if there's been a grey zone shift. No, I don't believe so. Well, this map has been very clunky for me the last 6 months, but we can see, and I've seen multiple confirming this, that Ukraine has recovered the industrial refractory plant in here as well. I've seen multiple sources saying that Ukraine has recovered this as well. Surak is showing a successful attack here. So we will see, but saying that that Russia is pushing into Novi right here, north to south. So again, we will see what happens in here. Chassis VR, the story of the Bakhmut front is nowhere near done. Now let's move up. Of course, this is what we typically refer to as Pishani, and we've seen where Ukraine had an advancement in here. Very important, I believe, to try and reopen this, as Russia is expanding a lot of control, trying to reach the Oskil in other places. We can see that Syriac is claiming just around this area here that the Russian army made a small advance east of this Zarazove in this direction as well. So take that as you will, but that's the end of our maps today. This is looking like it might be under a half an hour video. Now, this is something else I wanted to talk about. There's the increase in propaganda recently is massive. And what I will say is the increase in propaganda we have seen is primarily from the Ukrainian side, or Ukrainian accounts, pro-Ukrainian accounts. And that is telling for what we're seeing on the front line, that if things start moving, propaganda starts increasing. We saw the exact same thing end of 22, mid 2023, when Ukraine was advancing on the battlefield. We saw the Russian propaganda pop up. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Of course, you're trying to buffer what is happening. And this is exactly what we see is as Russia makes more gains, it's directly correlation between the more Russia kilometre squares it makes, the more casualties that are shown on those casualty figures, which in my opinion, those casualty figures, whether it's Russian, Ukrainian, X, Y, Z, fucking whoever's, are just a form of propaganda anyway, because it would be impossible to count up that anyway when you've got an attackers hitting a bunker 200 kilometres away, you don't know who's in it. So this is another bit here. Ministry of Defence UK, again, fighting off an illegal invasion that hasn't stopped Ukraine from rebuilding its economy. Now, they say here, after 1,000 days of war, Ukraine's economy remains resilient. The next slide say it was a 5% growth in 23, 3% growth in 2024. Now, this is propaganda. What we always say is effective propaganda has a true beginning, and you pick at that thread and make it what you want. It's selective without nuance added. That is effective propaganda. And this is what they have said is true, but if you add nuance, it's not. Ukraine is currently in a state of selective default on its sovereign debt obligations. Selected that because if it did default, there's a lot of problems to do with borrowing money and all these other capacities. The reason the hryvnia has value, the reason the economy hasn't collapsed, is because of international monetary funding, donations from countries, debt relief being put on pause or basically just into thin air, paid for by a taxpayer somewhere else, and money coming from frozen Russian assets. Let's not make out, like what this is trying to say is, well, the agricultural sector and the maritime sector and the metallurgical sector, the mining sector is increasing this. That is bullshit. That is not true. People are trying to compare this to the problems the Russian economy is having. That's not a good way to look. The Russian economy is basically sovereign, working by itself, sanctioned to shit. Some bits are speeding up. The ruble is dropping. There are problems there. Is it as severe as people are saying? Well, look at my podcast with an economist who's specifically in this. He gives a clear answer to that. But people point at Russia's defence spending 6 to 8%, saying this is out of control. Ukraine's is like 30%. So the statement is true, but it's if you're beyond your typical GDP is being donated into the country, you're going to see that as a byproduct. That doesn't mean that the internal sector and export is lifting that, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's have a look here at what has occurred. So Putin has said this. Now, at the end of the day, I believe this was said as a bit of a piss take, a bit of a joke. People take it very seriously, but it's a war. We should take things said seriously, but let's have a look at this. So he's talking about Oroshnik, those in the West, those in the US, of some kind of technological experiment. High-tech duel of the 21st century. Let's skip through this. This will be faster. For example, in Kiev, concentrate all the air and missile defense forces there, and we will strike with an Oroshnik and see what happens. We're ready for such experiment. We will conduct such an experiment, such technological duel, and see what happens. It's interesting. So what Putin is getting at here is saying that the Oroshnik cannot be intercepted. Now, this is propaganda as well in a piece. Can it be intercepted? Likely not. We know the speed of this. We know the problems with the things that are traveling hypersonic with the air in front of the missile system, and engagements can be a big problem. Radars may track it, but actually intercepting it can be a much larger problem again. But with this too is that if this could be in Russia's favour, because if it shows we're going to put, what he says is put everything there, we'll fire one, see if you can intercept it. If it can't be intercepted, of course, that is a big shockwave of Oroshnik that could hit anywhere. But if it is intercepted, that would be a massive backfire. Is this going to happen? No, it is not. And Zelensky has fired back on this, pardon the pun. People are dying and he thinks it's interesting, calling Putin then a dumbass, talking about this. I believe Putin was not serious on this because that was not going to happen. But again, Oroshnik is a strategic weapon system. This is where everyone's on tactical nukes that don't exist. That is a strategic system. Now, let's have a look at what Zelensky has said further in this. Today, Comrade Putin said that Russia is offering a high-tech duel. Today, there's a video of the high-tech duel, for example, hit Kyiv with the Oroshnik, a new missile. Let them try to intercept it with air defense and let's see what happens. Do you think this is an adequate person? Just scumbag. So Tor calls Putin a scumbag here. One thing I do see in this propaganda is, remember when Putin was like, he's got dementia, he's about to die, he's got cancer, all of that, and now that's all disappeared. So I like how there's like Twitter beef going on between world leaders like Zelensky and Orban at the moment, and Zelensky and Putin at the moment. It's wild that we get that. But that's not the first duel that we've ever seen before offered. And that one doesn't have the aura that this one does. Love or hate Prigozhin, leader of a brutal PMC. The aura was out of this world. Saying, this was Reuters reporting, Vladimir Zelensky, we've landed, we've bombed Bakhmut. This was Prigozhin sitting in the fucking seat of a fighter jet. Tomorrow, I'll fly a MiG-29. If you so desire, let's meet in the skies. If you win, you take Artemovsk, of course, Bakhmut. If you win, you take Bakhmut. If not, we will advance until the river Dnipro. We know what happened to Putin, what happened to Prigozhin in an aircraft. But that was that wild duel back then. The amount of men that got poured in, both Wagner, Russian, Ukrainian, into the Bakhmut grinder of men. The amount of men that poured in there, I sort of wish that duel did happen for the city of Bakhmut. At least it would have just been, well, you're sitting in a dual seater, so at least it would have been a maximum of 4 people died, rather than the thousands that got poured in there into an area that was important and wasn't important, that will become important again, I'm sure, at some point in time. We are under half an hour. Bang, legends. Look after yourselves, have a great day, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.